The United States just offered to buy Greenland for the third time in a century. China is building research stations there. Russia is reopening Cold War military bases nearby. And in 2025, Denmark spent over $2 billion upgrading air bases on an island that's supposedly just frozen wasteland. So why is everyone suddenly fighting over a giant block of ice? Because it's not just ice. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at Greenland the same way again. You've been lied to about Greenland your entire life. Every map you've ever seen makes it look massive, almost the size of Africa. But here's the truth. Greenland is actually smaller than Algeria. The Mercator projection, the map hanging in your classroom, stretches polar regions into distorted giants. It made Greenland seem like an enormous landmass when it's really just 2 million square kilometers. But here's where it gets interesting. Everyone focused on correcting the size distortion completely missed what's actually happening there. Because while we were arguing about map projections, the world's superpowers were quietly positioning themselves for the biggest resource grab of the 21st century. Right now, Greenland sits on an estimated 47 billion barrels of oil, 31 billion cubic meters of natural gas. And that's just what we know about. But oil and gas are yesterday's prizes. The real treasure buried under Greenland's ice sheet is something far more valuable: rare earth elements. These are the minerals that power everything in modern life. Your smartphone, electric vehicles, wind turbines, military defense systems, satellites. Every piece of technology you rely on needs rare earth elements to function. And currently, China controls over 70% of global rare earth production. They've essentially monopolized the supply chain until Greenland entered the picture. Geologists discovered that Greenland contains one of the world's largest deposits of rare earth elements, particularly in an area called Kvanefjeld. We're talking about potentially billions of dollars worth of neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, and terbium. These aren't just fancy names. They're the elements that make permanent magnets for electric motors, phosphors for LED screens, and catalysts for petroleum refining. Whoever controls these deposits controls the future of technology. And here's the part that makes governments nervous. As Arctic ice melts due to climate change, these resources are becoming accessible for the first time in human history. The ice that once protected Greenland's minerals is now revealing them. Climate catastrophe for the planet has become a gold rush for superpowers. But let's talk about what nobody mentions when they discuss Greenland: the people who actually live there. 56,000 people call Greenland home. Most are Inuit, indigenous to the Arctic for thousands of years. They didn't ask for this attention. They didn't invite foreign powers to start circling their island like sharks. Yet suddenly, their home has become the most contested territory on Earth. And here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because Greenland isn't even an independent country. It's still technically part of Denmark, a colonial arrangement that dates back to 1721. Denmark colonized Greenland, imposed its rule, and never really let go. Sure, Greenland gained self-governance in 1979, but Denmark still controls foreign policy and defense. It's autonomy in name only. The indigenous population has been watching this resource scramble with growing concern. Many Greenlanders want full independence from Denmark. They want control over their own minerals, their own future, their own destiny. But here's the impossible dilemma they face. Greenland's entire annual budget is roughly $2.8 billion. Denmark provides about $500 million in subsidies each year. Without that money, Greenland's economy would collapse overnight. They can't afford independence, but remaining dependent means watching foreign corporations and governments carve up their land for profit, while locals see little benefit. It's a trap, and everyone knows it. Now, here's where it gets geopolitical. Greenland sits at the absolute center of Arctic strategy. Look at a polar projection map, the kind that shows the world from above the North Pole. Greenland dominates the center. It's positioned between North America, Europe, and the Arctic Ocean. Whoever controls Greenland controls the shortest routes between continents. And as Arctic ice melts, new shipping lanes are opening. The Northwest Passage, once a frozen dream of explorers, is becoming navigable. Ships can now sail from Europe to Asia through Arctic waters, cutting transit time by thousands of kilometers compared to going through the Suez Canal. This isn't theoretical. It's happening right now, and Greenland sits right in the middle of these new trade routes. The United States understands this perfectly. That's why America maintains Thule Air Base in northern Greenland, now called Pituffik Space Base. This strategic installation houses early warning systems detecting missile launches, tracks satellites, and monitors the entire Arctic region. During the Cold War, the U.S. allegedly stored nuclear weapons there. Without this base, America would be strategically blind in the north. That's why when President Trump suggested buying Greenland in 2019, he wasn't joking. He was acknowledging reality. Greenland is worth more than entire countries. But America isn't alone. China has been quietly making moves. Chinese companies attempted mining investments. China tried financing airports before U.S. pressure blocked the deals. Chinese research vessels patrol Greenland's waters. Beijing's Arctic policy explicitly mentions Greenland's importance for resources and shipping routes. They call it the Polar Silk Road, connecting Arctic lanes to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Greenland is a puzzle piece in that vision, and China is patient. Russia, meanwhile, is rebuilding Soviet Arctic bases that fell into disrepair. Putin views the Arctic as Russia's strategic backyard. From Moscow's perspective, Greenland is uncomfortably close, like having a rival in your neighbor's yard. Russia watches, waits, and prepares. Because if tensions escalate, control of Arctic airspace and sea lanes could determine outcomes. Greenland would be the choke point. Let's address the elephant melting in the room. Climate change. The Greenland ice sheet loses 280 billion tons of ice annually. The ice contains enough water to raise sea levels by 7.4 meters, if fully melted. That would submerge coastlines, displace hundreds of millions, and redraw every map. Scientists say we're past stopping significant ice loss. The question isn't if Greenland's ice melts, but how fast. Here's the terrible irony. The climate catastrophe destroying ice sheets makes Greenland valuable. As ice retreats, it exposes land frozen for millennia. Mining becomes possible. Drilling becomes feasible. The tragedy warming our planet simultaneously creates the resource rush that could accelerate more warming. Extracting Greenland's oil and gas would release more carbon, melting more ice, exposing more resources. A feedback loop of exploitation and destruction. The melting ice reveals the very resources whose extraction causes more melting. Slow-motion planetary suicide disguised as economic opportunity. But even beyond resources and strategy, there's something else at play. Sovereignty and perception. Owning Greenland would fundamentally alter how a nation is perceived on the world stage. It would mean controlling the largest island on Earth after Australia, which is classified as a continent. It would mean Arctic dominance. When Trump suggested purchasing Greenland, Denmark's prime minister called the idea absurd. But was it really? The United States bought Alaska from Russia in 1867 for $7.2 million. That purchase is now considered one of the greatest real estate deals in history. Alaska contains enormous oil reserves, strategic military positioning, and vast natural resources. The parallels to Greenland are obvious. History suggests that what seems absurd today becomes obvious in hindsight. Nations that fail to secure strategic territories often regret it for generations. The people of Greenland are caught in the middle of all this. Many want independence, but not at the cost of becoming a corporate colony. Not at the cost of having their land strip mined while profits flow elsewhere. Not at the cost of seeing their culture, language, and way of life subsumed by foreign interests. The Greenlandic government has stated repeatedly that Greenland is not for sale. They're not interested in becoming America's 51st state, or China's resource depot, or Russia's buffer zone. They want self-determination on their own terms. But that requires money, building infrastructure, developing industries, creating an economy that can sustain 56,000 people in one of Earth's harshest environments. It's an enormous challenge. Here's something most people don't realize. Greenland has no roads connecting its towns. None. If you want to travel between settlements, you fly or take a boat. In winter, when the sea freezes, some communities are accessible only by helicopter or dog sled. The capital city, Nuuk, has just 19,000 residents. That makes it one of the world's smallest capitals. The entire island has limited internet infrastructure. Supply chains are fragile. Food is expensive because everything must be imported. Healthcare is basic. Education opportunities are limited. This is the reality of life in Greenland. It's beautiful, isolated, and extraordinarily difficult. Building a functioning independent nation under these conditions would require massive investment. Money Greenland doesn't have. Money that foreign powers are eager to provide, but with strings attached. Always strings attached. Consider the environmental cost of development. Opening massive mining operations in pristine Arctic wilderness would devastate local ecosystems. Drilling for oil risks spills in waters where cold temperatures make cleanup nearly impossible. Increased shipping traffic threatens marine mammals that depend on Arctic waters. Indigenous hunting grounds would be disrupted. Traditional ways of life that survived for thousands of years could disappear in a generation. All for rare earth elements and petroleum. Progress, they call it. Destruction. Others respond. The debate isn't theoretical, it's happening now. Mining licenses are being approved. Companies are moving equipment into position. Within 5 years, Greenland could look completely different. The question is whether the people who've called it home for millennia will have any say in what happens next. There's also a human rights dimension that gets conveniently ignored. During the Cold War, the United States forcibly relocated indigenous Greenlanders from their homes near Thule Air Base. Families were given 4 days' notice to abandon settlements their ancestors had occupied for generations. Denmark, as the colonial administrator, allowed it to happen. Those displaced families have never been adequately compensated. They've never received an apology that meant anything. The American and Danish governments simply erased their homes for strategic convenience. That history casts a long shadow over current discussions. When Greenland hears foreign powers discussing their land's strategic value, they remember. They know that to superpowers, people are secondary to interests. That truth hasn't changed. So, where does this leave us? Greenland stands at the intersection of climate catastrophe, resource scarcity, colonial legacy, and superpower competition. Every trend pushing the 21st century toward crisis converges on this frozen island. It's a preview of battles to come. As resources become scarce, as climate change reshapes geography, as old powers compete with rising ones, more places will look like Greenland. More indigenous populations will face impossible choices. More territories will become contested. More decisions will be made by people thousands of kilometers away who've never set foot on the land they're arguing over. Greenland isn't unique. It's the first symptom of a larger disease. The next decade will determine Greenland's fate. Will it achieve genuine independence? Will it become a de facto province of a larger power? Will mining companies strip its resources while locals watch from the sidelines? Will Denmark finally relinquish its colonial grip? Will climate change accelerate beyond all predictions, making these questions moot as rising seas transform global civilization? We don't know, but we're watching it happen in real time. Every news cycle brings another development, another bid, another discovery, another promise that sounds suspiciously like a threat. So, when you see Greenland on a map, remember, it's not just ice. It's rare earth elements worth billions. It's strategic military positioning for 3 superpowers. It's shipping lanes that could redefine global trade. It's the front line of climate catastrophe and colonial legacy. It's 56,000 people trying to determine their own future against impossible odds. It's 7.4 meters of potential sea level rise frozen in sheet ice. It's the past, present, and future of human civilization compressed into 2 million square kilometers of contested territory. Everyone suddenly wants Greenland because Greenland is everything. Resources, power, sovereignty, survival. The ice is melting. The powers are circling. And the people caught in the middle are running out of time to decide their own fate. If this deep dive into the geopolitics of the Arctic got you thinking, consider subscribing. We break down the hidden stories behind places everyone thinks they understand. Drop a comment and tell me, what surprised you most about Greenland? Did you know about the rare earth deposits, the mining rush, the indigenous perspective? Let me know what you think. And if you want to understand more about how climate change is reshaping global power, how maps lie to us, or why certain territories become flashpoints, check out the links in the description, because the world is changing fast, and Greenland is just the beginning.